Chapter 39. Michelle had recovered enough strength by now that she could do things like stand and use the bedside commode with assistance. Not having that mountain of pain from her arm hurting her anymore was a huge help, but the actual damage to the arm itself could kill her if we didn't do something soon. The amount of tissue damage was massive, with huge open wounds weeping lymph fluid onto the bandages that covered her entire arm. But now, with no feeling in the arm and no pain to stop us, we could attack the underlying lymphedema and give it everything we had. There was still a chance that we might be able to use the compression device to force the massive amount of toxified lymph fluid in her arm out through her open wounds and into her bandages. And along with some serious debridement of dead tissue, it just might work. So with Michelle's blessings, I went to work on it. And with the nerve blocks, she couldn't even feel that she had an arm. So I debrided massive amounts of dead tissue, some of it all the way down to the lower layers of skin. And I slathered the entire arm with that sulfur diazine cream like they use for burn victims. And then I bandaged it and went about using every compression device and compression technique. And I repeated this vigorously over the first week home. Now the debridement in the cream helped to clear out a lot of the infected tissue. But other than that, it had zero effect on the arm. And when I say I went after it vigorously, I went after it with everything I had. Like my wife's life depended on it. Because it did. After hours and hours and hours spent debriding and bandaging and wrapping and compressing and massaging and debriding and bandaging and wrapping and compressing and massaging and repeating the process over and over again, frantically, desperately, until finally, after about a week, we both had to admit it wasn't working and we weren't going to be able to save her arm. And Michelle ruled out amputation. Like I mentioned, and I didn't blame her. She was already weak. And cutting into an area with so much cancer would just make it spread to other areas faster. And besides, I'd already talked to Dr. Taylor about it some time back. And he just shook his head. Apparently he'd had other patients that had done it. Tried amputation. And with a sad, faraway look in his eyes, he simply said, I wouldn't recommend it, Mr. Baker. At night, when it was just me and Michelle, we lay close to each other on those hospital beds. And we talked deep into the next morning sometimes. Beautiful, heartbreaking conversations. As we had to come to terms with the fact that her soul would be free of her wounded shell soon. And she'd be making her journey home. And that the beautiful life we'd envisioned for ourselves, beating cancer together, growing old together, testifying to God's grace and His mercy and His love together. Come to terms with the fact that that life as we'd envisioned it wasn't meant to be. Our faith promises us victory over the grave. And it did give us great comfort to know that we'd be together again someday. And that Michelle would be going home to our Father, who loves her even more than I do. But it still does not dispel the terrifying fear and dread of being separated by death, even if only temporary, from someone you love so dearly. But as we started to come to terms with our new reality, we began to realize something. Our love story didn't have to end that way. What is God? God is love. And love is the most powerful force in the universe. It's beautiful, powerful love that Michelle and I share is a gift from God. It's not a love based on physical bodies or anything of this world. We love each other for our very souls. And if the soul is with God, and God is everywhere, then my Michelle hasn't gone anywhere. Like many things of the physical world that we take for granted as being real, the distance between us is only an illusion. And we only believe in it because we inhabit physical bodies. And this makes the illusion very convincing. But an illusion is not the real thing, no matter how convincing it is. And these bodies are not our real form, even though they appear to be. The real world is the domain of God, or heaven, and its inhabitants are beings of living energy, spirit. The spirit world sits right on top of the roof of our world. And our souls are made of spirit. They are the only part of us that is real and not illusion. When you love each other for the soul, you can never be separated. Not even by death. So in the early morning hours of the last few weeks of our life on earth together, physically, Michelle and I began planning for our new life together spiritually. This was uncharted territory, to say the least. There were a whole lot of unknowns. But one thing we knew for certain: we were not going to let death separate us. Not even temporarily. We had bound ourselves together as one with our holy vows. And through the divine gift of love, our souls would remain forever bound.